A fighter plane belonging to the Ukrainian Air Force has targeted the Pol-21 radar station belonging to the occupying Russian army in the occupied territory of Zaporizhzhia region. 2 strikes by a French-made AASM-250 Hammer bomb destroyed the tower where the radar station is located. As a result, the station was destroyed by explosion. Pol-21 is designed to counter high-precision weapons and other enemy systems that use satellite navigation. The task of this complex is to jam and suppress the signals of navigation satellites.
The invasion of Ukraine has destroyed the Russian financial system, and now the war is the only source of growth for the Russian economy. This is stated in an article in The Telegraph. Russian dictator Vladimir Putin has been talking a lot lately about his desire for peace. These are just words. In reality, the Kremlin does not need the aggression to stop. US leader Donald Trump seems either unaware of this point or simply indifferent. He has embarked on a mission to reset relations with Moscow by promising to end the war in Ukraine. He has shocked the international community by upending Western foreign policy, re-establishing ties with Moscow, and ruling out providing US security guarantees or NATO membership for Ukraine. Trump claims that if Ukraine capitulates, Putin will keep his word and not go to war again. But this is not to be trusted. Even a peace agreement in Putin's favor will not solve the problem of Russia's economic and ideological dependence on the war. Russia's economy is groaning under the weight of the war, suffering from labor shortages, sanctions, high inflation and record interest rates. At the same time, the war remains the only engine of growth. Putin doesn't want peace, and he's not going to back down. He likes war. Trump wants a quick victory. He wants triumph and show, and Putin will use him. He is being used, said Simon Johnson, an MIT professor and former chief economist at the IMF. In 2019, Russia spent 5 trillion rubles on defense and security, which is 28% of all government spending. This year, nominal spending will amount to 17 trillion rubles, 41% of all government spending. The military economy makes up 8% to 10% of Russia's GDP. Only industry, including the military-industrial complex, is currently the only sector of the Russian economy that is growing. The remaining civilian sectors are either stagnating or degrading. If the war is stopped now, there will be nothing left of the Russian economy. The recession will be so strong that the situation inside the country may be shaken. Cutting government spending on military needs will plunge Russia into economic stagnation comparable to that of the USSR in the 1980s. Russia has no other levers to support the economy. Its service sector is not competitive at the global level, and its technology sector is lagging, experts say. War for Putin is also a way to retain power. Experts note that the Russian dictator always begins aggression during the fall of his ratings in order to unite society around his person, to switch the people's anger to an external enemy. In parallel with this, the Russian dictator received new opportunities to enrich himself and his closest circle. As long as Russia's war machine continues to operate, few believe that any peace agreement will last.
Despite US President Donald Trump's claims that Ukraine is not in a very good position, Ukrainian troops are counterattacking in several important areas of the front, writes military observer David Axe in Forbes. A few months ago, the Russians did have the advantage, but that is no longer the case, Axe says. In and around Toretsk in eastern Ukraine, he says, the Ukrainians are counterattacking and pushing back into the city. The analyst recalled that at the beginning of February the Russians announced the capture of the city, but, he writes, Russian control over it did not last long. 2 weeks after the Russians had completely occupied the ruins of Toretsk, the Ukrainians counterattacked, and quickly advanced back into the city, Axe said, adding that he learned about this by accident. According to him, a Russian military blogger published a video allegedly about an unsuccessful counterattack by the Ukrainian armed forces on American armored vehicles on the outskirts of Toretsk. In fact, the Observer writes, the video shows Ukrainian troops in the center of Toretsk, and not just in the border zone, as the Russian claimed. In fact, the video the blogger posted alongside his missive revealed Ukrainian troops in central Toretsk, and not just in the border area, as the Russian claimed. A week later, western Toretsk was again contested, according to the definitive Ukraine control map. And it was possible a few Russian troops were clinging to an exposed salient jutting into the urban no-man's land. Fighting continues in the city center, and the enemy is losing control, the Estonian analyst War Translated noted. There are reports of complete encirclement of Russian occupiers in several areas. In pushing back the Russians, the Ukrainian brigades around Toretsk, including the 92nd Assault Brigade and the 100th Mechanized Brigade, join sister units that recently successfully counterattacked on the eastern edge of the 250 square mile salient Ukrainian forces occupy in western Russia's Kursk Oblast. Axe also cited data from Estonian analyst War Translated, who reported that fighting continues in the center of Toretsk, the enemy is losing control, and there are reports of the complete encirclement of Russian occupiers in several areas. The analyst recalled that Russian troops in Ukraine recently changed their priority to the Toretsk axis after they were recaptured from the fortress city of Pokrovsk, and that this, he says, is especially offensive to the occupiers. Even reinforced by troops transferred from the Pokrovsk axis, the Russian regiments in and around Toretsk are retreating, the Observer writes. A mining city with a pre-war population of 35,000, Toretsk is important. It straddles high ground overlooking important supply lines threading along the Ukrainian side of the front line. It's true that Ukraine has struggled to mobilize enough infantry to keep its best brigades fully manned. But it's not true that Ukrainian forces are getting buried. In fact, in recent weeks they've advanced in at least as many sectors as they've retreated.